Well, a very good afternoon to you all, and a very warm welcome to this, our service for the first Sunday of Advent. And that means, of course, that we're going to light the first candle on our Advent wreath today. Now, you can see we've got candles of different colours there. 3 purple, 1 white, 1 pink. Can you remember from last year what colour we light today?
A purple.
A purple one, spot on, you're right there. And do you know when we light the white one?
Black.
That's the last one, but that's lit on Christmas Day, that one, quite correct. So that leaves 2 purple ones and a pink one. So you've got perhaps a 1 in 3 chance of getting this right. Is it the 2nd, 3rd or 4th Sunday of Advent that we light the pink one? Yeah.
Is it the 3rd?
3rd, spot on. Very good, yes. Yeah, we'll light the pink one on the 3rd Sunday of Advent. Yeah. So I'm going to begin now by lighting the first purple candle. And our introit today is printed on the hymn sheets, 2 verses. And if you'll remain seated to sing this, please. A candle is burning, a flame warm and bright, a candle of hope in the winter's dark night. These opening words are by Cliff Reed. The light of Christmas beckons, and we stumble towards it once again, through doubt, distraction, and despair. Spirit of Him who came and is to come, be with us on the journey. Give us hope enough to hear the angels and to help others hear them too. So let us join together now in the words of our first hymn. People look east, the time is near of the crowning of the year. Our first hymn.
Amen.
Let us join together now in a time of prayer. Let us pray. The centuries have come and gone. Generations have passed. And still the prophecy is not fulfilled. When shall it be, O God, that the wilderness shall blossom as the rose, and the rough places be made plain? When shall the time come, the time promised, when swords shall be turned into plowshares, and spears into pruning hooks? When shall the strife be ended, and your reign of love appear? Renew our hope and revive our spirits. Bring light to our darkness and guide our feet into the way of peace. Amen. Let us say together now the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power and the glory, for ever and ever. Amen. Well, it's not long until Christmas now. Who thinks that they might get a present or two at Christmas? Is there anybody? Oh yes, yeah. Some of you are expecting some. Yeah. You're all quite deprived, you older ones, aren't you? Yeah, but you're expecting you'll get something. That's really good. Do any of you think you might get more than 2 presents? Yes. I suspect you probably will, won't you? Yeah, I'm sure you will. Do you think you'll get what you want for Christmas? Yeah, you've got it all planned, have you? Good. I thought you might have. Has anyone started writing their Christmas cards yet? Oh, yes, good. Some of you are, yes, that's really good. Very impressed. I'm always on the last minute. Very last minute with mine. And is there anybody here today who will have the job of preparing the Christmas dinner? Oh yes, yeah, quite a few of you will have to do that, won't you? Good. There's a lot to think about as we prepare for Christmas. During these few weeks of Advent, which don't know whether it feels like this to any of the other older ones, but they always seem to be shorter than all the other weeks of the year. So to start us off today, in this time of Advent, I just want to tell you a little story about 3 animals: a mole, a fox, and a rabbit. And they lived in a field on the edge of a town where they were very happy until one day a loud noise woke Mole from his sleep. And then, before he could really work out what was happening, the roof disappeared off his home, and he could see the sky from his bed. And when he popped his head out of the hole and had a look round, he could see huge diggers digging up the field. And he was frightened, and he thought, the world must be coming to an end. And his next thought was that he wanted to warn his friends, the fox and the rabbit. So he shouted a warning to them. But they didn't seem to be interested. They didn't seem to care that the world was coming to an end. But Mole was so frightened that he ran and ran as fast as he could to a nearby wood, where he fell onto the ground exhausted on a pile of leaves. And as he did that, a voice came from underneath the leaves, saying, "Be careful, this is my home. What are you doing here?" And Mole sat up as a sharp needle jabbed him in the back. "I'm sorry," he said, "but don't you know the world is coming to an end?" And a hedgehog crawled out from under the leaves, looked at him and said, "Well, your world might be coming to an end, but mine is just fine. So move on so I can get back to sleep." So Mole carried on walking through the wood. He thought that he might call in on his cousin, Millie, but he didn't think he'd tell her that the world was coming to an end, because here in the wood, everything was calm and peaceful. And Mole realised that the hedgehog was right. Although it had felt like a huge disaster to Mole himself, few other creatures were affected by the diggers. Perhaps the world wouldn't end immediately, after all. Well, Advent is traditionally a time for us to prepare for Christmas with all its presents and greetings and nice food. So you might be thinking now, why is he banging on about the end of the world? What's that got to do with Advent and Christmas? Well, in a way, Christmas should be the end of the world. Not in a disastrous way, though. In a good way. Christmas is not about the presents, the cards, and the food. It's about the birth of the baby Jesus, who, when he grew up, taught people that they should love each other and help each other. And each year, Advent and Christmas remind us of that. So Christmas, in one way, should be the end of the world. The end of the old world, the bad world, the world where horrible things happen. And the beginning of a new world of love and peace for everyone. But that can only happen when everyone wants it to. And only when everyone has learned to walk in the ways of love. Now we're going over to the General Assembly President, Joan Cook, who will now say a few words.
My very best wishes and Christmas greetings to all our congregations, districts, and individual members of this, our General Assembly of Unitarian and Free Christian Churches. Usually, at Christmas, as Christmas approaches, we are encouraged to look beyond the boundaries of our immediate environment, to consider others less fortunate, those whose lives are made more difficult by conflict, statelessness, homelessness, or ill health, those dealing with loss of loved ones, job, or home. But this year, I should like us to look closer to home, to look at our own families, to acknowledge and recognise all that they mean to us. But what do we mean by family? I remember as a student, the professor of social policy standing in front of us declaring, I am a family of one. At the time I found that difficult to grasp, but actually I found social policy difficult to grasp. But as time went on, I came to understand what she meant. She was looking at the family as a unit of society, as a contributing and productive unit. And so she was right. She was a family of one. What we describe as a family has changed through time. We have moved from the basic survival units of early man through to units bound by ties of blood, from extended families to the more strictly defined nuclear units of the post-industrial age. And society has, as a result, changed its expectations accordingly. We no longer expect housing, education, health, social or childcare needs to be met solely by the family. But what continues is the expectation of responsibility. Every member of a family has a responsibility to the other members, depending on their ability and their own needs. Families can be supportive, encouraging and nurturing, but this is not always the case, in which case it may be the others who provide this support, close friends, colleagues, members of communities such as our church. It may be social or neighbourhood groups where we form our closest relationships. What we want and need from family is a feeling of being safe, of being held, of being loved. For many of us, that is what we get from our families. We are held safely in love within our family. Whatever the makeup of the group which provides this, if that is what we get from them, then they are our family. We have a responsibility to them, and they to us. For some people, Christmas can be a difficult time. While we are celebrating families, family life, they are being reminded that their families are not providing the nurturing environment we would wish for. Or it may be that this Christmas they are incomplete, that one or more of their family is no longer amongst them, perhaps because of geography, divorce, or death. Just as the concept of family changes over time, so too does the makeup of a family. Members come and go, new people join our family, and people leave. It is the same regardless of the type of family we belong to. Members join and leave our church family for various reasons. And it is at this time of year we feel their loss most acutely. We can't make everything right for everyone, but what we can do is, as congregations and individuals, try to reach out to those whose family situation is not supporting them or providing them with the security, help and love we all need, in whatever way we can. As we remember that Christmas image of a family, it brings to mind our own families, and sometimes the feeling that inspires are warm, comfortable, loving, and sometimes less so. But every Christmas brings a message of hope. Hope that whatever has gone before need not continue or be repeated. That we can, by experiencing the love and hope that are the Christmas message, build our own families, be they families defined by consanguinity or community, and provide for others as well as ourselves places of encouragement, safety and love. Somehow, last year our nativity creche at St. Mark's acquired an extra Mary, Joseph and baby Jesus, which, along with our rather eclectic stable menagerie, gave a rather different slant on the traditional nativity scene. But on reflection, many children today are born into single-parent or composite families. Some into families where there are 2 mummies or 2 daddies. And given Mary's youth, she was at increased risk of a multiple birth, so there may well have been a twin. So perhaps our creche truly was a nativity for the 21st century. So whatever the shape of your family, be it a family made up of one individual, a nuclear or composite family, a close group of special friends, or an extended clan, may you find the hope, joy, love, and peace that are the message of Christmas. I wish you all a Merry Christmas and a happy, healthy New Year.
Thank you, Joan. So let's just think about that now as we sing together our next hymn. The Spirit lives to set us free. Walk in the light of love.
This is an Advent hymn by John Midgley. Here's the time of preparation. Our hearts now know anticipation as Christmas Day draws near once more. Dying sun, midwinter coldness, yet we shall see the festal boldness of evergreens around the door. Our memories will stir as lights adorn the fir. Come this season, Our gifts we'll choose, bright cards peruse, as greetings flow from shore to shore. Listen now to carols singing, hark to the herald angels bringing the word to shepherds long ago. Candles gleam and fires are lighted, and travellers coming home are sighted to share their gifts with those they know. We shall prepare the way, so this beloved day knows a welcome. With open heart we'll make the start of this glad time our love to show. Soon the hours of merrymaking, for giving and for humbly taking, as Christmas sharings grace our ways. God of love, we'll know your presence. God of joy, you are the essence of all true pleasure and of praise, and we shall hope until the morning brings the thrill of a vision of peace on earth, its symbol, birth, to make bright joy of future days.
Loving God, the great festival of Christmas is drawing near, and we will be busy preparing for it. Choosing presents, writing cards, planning get-togethers, buying food. So much that has become an accepted and expected part of this season. Yet, in all the bustle, we so easily forget the baby born in a stable all those years ago. We tell ourselves that we are different, that we will be worshipping here Sunday after Sunday, singing familiar hymns and carols, and hearing again the familiar story. But we know that this isn't enough in itself. For these too can become just another part of our traditional celebrations. And we can become so concerned with the wrapping that we fail to recognize the gift concealed underneath. This season is so easily turned into an opportunity for material extravagance rather than an opportunity for spiritual fulfillment. We do so much to prepare for Christmas on the surface, yet so little to make ourselves ready within. So today, we begin our preparations by thinking of others for whom there is no celebration. The poor and hungry, the homeless and the sick, the lonely and the bereaved, the oppressed and persecuted. May your light reach into the darkest places of the world, so that there may be hope rather than despair, joy rather than sorrow, and love rather than hatred. May the message of hope which Advent brings burst afresh into our world, bringing help, hope, and healing. Amen. Let us join together now in the words of our third hymn. High o'er the lonely hills, black turns to grey. Bird song the valley fills, mists fold away. Our third hymn. Well, I wonder if any of you read or heard a news item a few weeks ago about the most popular names that parents are giving to their children at the moment. There has apparently been a growing trend over the last 10 years or so for naming children after television characters, footballers, football teams, and even shops and products that are advertised on television. Well, I suppose the fashion for giving children less common or unusual names was started by some of the so-called celebrity couples. And once they have done it, there are inevitably others who will follow. I have certainly noticed how fashions in names change over the years, almost as quickly as the changes in fashion of ladies' hats at weddings. Ministers notice these things. But naming a child after a car or a brand of soap powder is probably taking things a bit far. Or is it? These people are naming their children after something which they see around them. Something which has a place in their lives. Albeit a trivial place, most of us would say, but nevertheless a place. We have become accustomed to giving children names which run in the family, or names which we like, without really giving any thought to what the names mean. Most of our popular names mean something because they are words which have their origins in other languages. Names such as Peter and Andrew from Greek words. Or in a few cases, they are words taken directly from our own language, such as Pearl, Dawn, or June. We tend not to think about that these days. But in generations past, people did. And people such as the Quakers might have called one of their children Praise the Lord. Or other religious groups gave their children names like Endeavour. And it was the fashion at one time to give girls names which are virtues, such as Charity, Constance, Patience, or Verity, which means truth, of course. And looking even further back, in the ancient world, the meaning of a name was of even greater importance. And we can see this clearly in the way children are named in the Bible, particularly in the Old Testament. This afternoon, I want to bring 3 of those names to your attention. Firstly, from the first book of Samuel, chapter 4, verse 21, it says, "She named the child Ichabod, meaning the glory is departed from Israel." Then secondly, from the same book, chapter 7, verse 12, used here not for a child, but it is still a name. Samuel took a stone and called the name of it Ebenezer, saying, "Thus far the Lord has helped us." In other words, Ebenezer means, "Thus far the Lord has helped us." Well, that one's a more familiar name to us, isn't it? But it's not one that we would actually give a child these days. But that's the fault of Charles Dickens. It's not the fault of the name. And then thirdly, as we heard from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 1, verse 23, "They shall call his name Emmanuel," which means God with us. 3 names: Ichabod, Ebenezer, and Emmanuel. Well, poor little Ichabod didn't come out of the name-giving stakes very well. He was saddled with a nasty reminder that he was born at a time when the fortunes of Israel were at their lowest ebb, just after the Ark of the Covenant had been removed by force by the Philistines. Now, it's very difficult for us to really understand how important the Ark of the Covenant was to the ancient Israelites. Externally, it was just a wooden chest covered with a golden lid called the mercy seat, on which there were the figures of two cherubim facing each other. And between them, there was an empty space. Its very emptiness, the symbol of the unseen God, of whom no image could be made. Inside the ark, however, were the tablets of stone with the commandments engraved upon them, Aaron's rod and a pot of manna. Simple enough in itself. Yet the ark symbolized God's gracious dealings with Israel, providing for their needs and the law. It had become a focus of national unity and a visible reminder of God's favour. So when it was stolen from them by their enemies, the Philistines, they were convinced that the great days of Israel were over. So when the grandson of the old priest Eli was born, with his father already dead and his mother dying in childbirth, it seemed that God had completely withdrawn favour. And so the poor little child was given the name Ichabod. The glory is departed from Israel. God's favour had not been withdrawn, though. The ark did not remain long with the Philistines. It caused them so much trouble that they were eventually glad to get rid of it. And by the time Ichabod had grown up, the ark was back in its place. The Philistines had been defeated, and the wise Samuel was the dominant figure in Israel. And it was at that point that Samuel looked back on all Israel's troubles, on the removal of the ark and its restoration, on the attacks of the Philistines, and on their final defeat. And he realized that God had never deserted them. And so he set up a stone and called it Ebenezer, which means, thus far the Lord has helped us. Well, turning to our own times, when we look at both church and society, we might be tempted to cry, Ichabod, the glory is departed. Nothing seems to be as it was. Our communities have changed almost out of all recognition within the span of one lifetime. People who can remember never locking a door in their childhood now live behind several locks and probably a burglar alarm as well. From knowing everyone on their street, they now probably know no one. Things seem to have gone wrong somewhere, and the glory of our neighbourly, civilised society seems to have departed. Similarly, the churches are not what they were. The days of the house full sign outside a church, as I'm told often happened at Cross Street Chapel at one time, those days seem to be well and truly over. And the days when the church was sure of its place in society seem to have gone. Our forebears were so sure of their faith that they founded new congregations and built glorious buildings like this one for future generations. Would we have the faith to do the same today? And so, it is easy for us to assume that the glory has departed once again. The Philistines are in the ascendant, and the Ark of the Covenant has been spirited away. Ichabod, the glory, is departed. But like Samuel, we must learn to look a bit deeper at things. If we look at the last 100 years or so, we can see that all has not been lost. In fact, we have actually made great progress. We are healthier and longer lived than previous generations have ever been. We have access to all kinds of health care and assistance when we need it. We all live comfortable, if not wealthy, lives. We no longer, as a matter of course, see undernourished children on our streets, poorly clothed and unhealthy. And it isn't all that long since that was a feature of our towns and cities. People no longer die in great numbers from epidemics such as tuberculosis and diphtheria. And despite the fact that most people seem to think that they are hard done to, our standard of living is out of all proportion to that which an ordinary family in a northern town such as Dukinfield could have even imagined 100 years ago. And things are not as bad as they may at first seem in the churches either. It is true that numbers are not what they were. But there is no doubt that numbers were artificially inflated in the past by people who came to services because it was the respectable, accepted thing to do, not because they wanted to. Today, our churches and chapels are smaller, but more honest and genuine. And we are still here. We have a very active and enthusiastic congregation, and we are not alone in that. Things are not as bad as they at first seem. So as we look back with the eye of faith, surely we shouldn't cry Ichabod, but Ebenezer. Thus far the Lord has helped us. But even that isn't the last word. There's still a bit of cautious skepticism in that word Ebenezer. Thus far the Lord has helped us. It seems to be saying, yes, I admit the Lord has helped us up to now. But as for tomorrow, that's another thing altogether. Who can say what will happen? You see, Ichabod and Ebenezer are both backward looking, and neither of them is really sufficient to reassure us. During Advent, we prepare ourselves to celebrate the birth of him who was called Emmanuel, which means God with us. And that gives us great hope and reassurance for the future. It reminds us that God is not only a God of the past, but of the present and future as well. The God of tomorrow, as well as the God of yesterday. God is always with us. We cannot tell what the future will hold. It will probably be as different from today as today is from our grandparents' day. But there is one thing that we can be sure of. The future will be as full of God as ever was the past, whether people acknowledge that or not. The stories about the life of Jesus show us something of the nature and love of God. And one of the most important things is the reminder in that name, Emmanuel, God with us forever. Amen. We're going to sing together now our closing hymn. Now, at the conclusion of this hymn, please remain standing for the blessing and then for the singing of the closing verses, Hills of the North, rejoice. So we'll sing together now, Today be joy in every heart, for lo, the angel throng, once more above the listening earth, repeats the Advent song. May the life that is God animate our frames. May the truth that is God light up our minds. May the love that is God fill our hearts and govern our lives. And the blessing of God rest and remain with each one of you and with all those that you love, this day and always. Amen.